I'm Dr. Janet Smith Warfield. I would like to welcome everyone to the Expanding Consciousness Collective. Today it is primarily Dr. V and me with a focus on the global implications of Expanding Consciousness Collective. So let's get started with our traditional singing bowl, and then Dr. V will do a short centering offering, and then we'll get started. So here we go.
Let's take a deep breath in and let it out gently. Breathe in and out, in and out, and in and out. And as we continue to breathe on our own rhythm, let us feel the oneness that we really are. We are not really this body that limits us. We are not really the mind that limits us. We are one. We are one with our neighbors, with our communities, with our nations, one with all the beings on planet Earth, and one, that oneness that pervades everything. That's what we really are. And in that oneness, let us shine as we breathe in and breathe out, and in and out, and smile as we gently open our eyes.
Thank you, V. We have been kind of comparing notes for the past several weeks. V, correct me if I'm wrong, V, or maybe I should let you speak for yourself. V was born in South Africa, but she has Indian heritage. By Indian, I don't mean American Indian, I mean Indian. She has lived in 24 or 26 countries. I forget the exact number. I know it was quite a lot, quite an impressive number. And I too have lived in several different countries, and recently came back from trips to India and Africa. So we both have many, many, many global connections. Do you have anything you want to add to that, V?
It's actually 26 cities that I've lived in. That accounts for about 6 countries that I've lived in, but traveled extensively to over 60 countries. Just to rectify that. Go ahead, Janet. I'm fine with what you're saying.
Okay, and I haven't counted the number of countries I've lived in or traveled to, so I don't have exact numbers, but I can tell you I began as an exchange student to Berlin, Germany with the American Field Service when I was 16 years old. Quite an amazing experience for a 16-year-old. Thank God my parents allowed me to make that trip, because 3 weeks before I left, there were riots in West Berlin. West Berlin was encapsulated within East Germany at the time. My parents let me go anyway. As a 16-year-old, I was put on a American troop train in Frankfurt, Germany, and given strict instructions. We went through East Germany at night with heavy drapes closed across the windows, and I was given strict instructions not to open the drapes, not to look out. Of course, being 16, I thought I was invulnerable, and I was curious and wanted to see what was out there. So when the train stopped, I peeked out between the curtains. We were in Potsdam, right outside of Berlin, and the whole train station was loaded with soldiers with guns. Closed the drapes quickly. V, would you like to add?
Well, I've lived in so many countries and met so many people. And what I can say right now, and I'm sure Janet as well, because of your recent travels to India and Africa, and looking at the global situation right now, where there's still so much of suffering, whether the guns were when we were 16 years old, which is what I was experiencing too, right till today, it seems as if the same cycle is going on and on and on. And you've been to Africa, where it is said that, well, the scientists now think, who knows what they'll think in the next 10 years, but for now, they think that that's where humanity really originated from. You've been there, and you've been to India, which is actually the most ancient spiritual civilization ever to exist on planet Earth. Perhaps you could bring into play some of the other dimensions that you've experienced in these two places on planet Earth.
I think I can. The thing that impressed me the most about both India and Africa was the respect the people had for one another and for life in general, despite the physical poverty and in India, there are plastics all over the beach. There are plastics down in the gutters. People are obviously physically poor. They are spiritually rich. They have a spiritual wealth that we in the United States have lost. And I found the same to be true in Africa. In Uganda, in the little community of Katwadi, where I was welcomed, I was given a home there in the community by two wonderful host and hostess. They treated me like family. They, the father in the family, he was so cute. He said, "Well, you are my sister." And then when we had a discussion and it turned out that I was older than he was, he said, "Oh, well then you must have been the firstborn of my father." I felt so safe. I felt so honored. I felt so respected in that community. The woman who invited me there, Jane Nakalema, who's quite an amazing young woman in her own right, invited me to her parents' home for an afternoon. Her mother presented me with a plaque, a beautiful, beautiful plaque that it must have taken her many hours to create. It was a beaded plaque, and it said on it, "Dr. Janet Smith, you inspire us." She didn't have to do that, but she did it out of the goodness of her heart. When I came back to the United States, I flew into Atlanta. That was my international arrival point. And the contrast between the love and respect I received from some very physically poor people by U.S. standards compared to walking into TSA at Atlanta, where everybody is giving everybody else orders and treating everybody like objects to be shuffled around, and there's chaos and confusion, and there's just a very unpleasant atmosphere. It was a culture shock to me to come back into the country in which I was born and observe the lack of disrespect compared to what I experienced in both India and Africa. I'm sure both are considered third world countries. Mm-hmm. And that's just looking at it from a physical perspective, not a spiritual perspective. Because spiritually, both countries, both continents had a wealth that Americans have lost.
Mm. And I think you were presented with a deity in India, right? I know that the last session you showed us the deity, but you couldn't speak because your microphone wasn't working. Could you tell us how you got it?
Oh, no, wait a minute. How I got what?
The deity.
Oh, the deity? I don't remember what that conversation was right now. Maybe, another thing I really experienced in India. We spent a lot of time. I was with Andrew Harvey and Sacred Earth Journeys, Hill and May, and Nandi Kumar. And we spent a lot of time walking barefoot around temples. And we also lived in an ashram for 3 days, or two days and 3 nights, I believe it was. There was and we went to the ashram of Sri, probably help me here, the Sri Maharishi. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And there's so many ashrams.
Yes, I know. And he taught through silence and presence. There was a couple in our group who stood before a portrait, Maharishi, in his ashram. They stood there for about 20 minutes just looking at it. And then all of a sudden it was as if the portrait came alive. It looked as if his eyes were moving, as if he was welcoming them somehow. And they both had the same experience. They said it was really quite transformative, quite fascinating. But yes, just the idea of the ultimate transformation is not through words, but through personal presence and often just through silence, just being there in your own strength, your own power, who you are. You don't have to do anything else. You don't have to talk. You don't have to do anything except just be.
Mm. Yeah, so that's the spirit of India. It's and that's why when you started off, you said there's all this pollution all over these days. There's plastics, and even if you're trekking in the Himalayas, where I've been, you see these packets, garbage thrown around, and then you also, go back in time to when this wasn't so, before the Westerners or the Europeans invaded India and brought with them every type of physical technology. Whereas in India, it's based on spiritual technology. So we've seen the shift, and this is what is sad, even in these cultures that are so profound, that could possibly help us as humanity to restore compassion and peace on planet Earth. It's these very cultures themselves that have slowly been destroyed by cultures or people who don't have an understanding of it, where it's the physical thing. Only if you see something, you can touch it, smell it, feel it, all of that it truly exists. And this is what you're saying. You see, when they stood in front of the portrait and when they felt the eye open, it's this oneness that the Indian culture and tradition is based on. They have this knowledge that we are truly oneness with the cosmic consciousness. And we can, even in our daily lives, be that. Just be it, instead of being focused on this physical body that we try to indulge in, feed in, clothe in, and the mind and all the positions and the titles and all of that. It's only when we dissolve that we can truly understand what it is that we really are. And that's that oneness. And you just merge with one, whether it is with the portrait, accessing that cosmic consciousness, or with the deity. It is a key to open the door so that you can access that reality, that absolute reality that we really are. And that's what would be wonderful if we could restore it throughout the planet.
And I'm laughing because it's so hard to find the words to express this. As the Taoists say, the Tao that can be spoken is not the Tao. So you can't use words. Words are fingers pointing at the moon, but they not the moon. The map is not the territory. The words are not the experience. So any words that you and I speak are only our feeble attempts to communicate something that we personally have experienced. How do we open the doors to inviting other people into this experience of oneness? How do we do that?
Oh, this has been revealed over 10,000 years ago. The Indians have been living their lives in this state for over 10, in fact, it's over 25,000 years ago. They knew about cosmology. They knew about Ayurvedic medicine. They knew of mathematics, all of this, but they didn't create the technologies that we've seen created these days through the regular science, because there was no need for it. All you had to do was realize and experience, because this is what you're saying. We have to experience. It's not a belief system or a concept. It is reality that all you need initially is to be a seeker. Once you begin to ask that question, you look around and you go, oh my gosh, look at this world we've created. We're so stressed. There are so many deadlines. We're always rushing for time. We really feel as if we're in this bind. How can I get out of it? That's all it takes initially, Janet, for that person. Once you reach the stage, whoever is watching this or is going to watch it later on, if you're at that stage in your life where you're beginning to question life itself, what is this? What is it really? That's all it takes, that first seeking. And once you start seeking, that little door opens. And then you find that the right people come in to play, and you become more open to it. And this is the next step. Be open everything. You know how I have lived in all these countries on my own, solo, without knowing anyone else, is only by being open to everything, not restricting ourselves by our belief systems, by religion, by education, by our titles, by what we wear, the color of our skin, our gender. You know, in the Indian culture, there's not just two genders. They realize there's numerous genders, as have the Indians from the Americas, the ancient Indian. They realized there's more than 4 genders a long time ago. You know? So this is it. All of this have been realized. In the ancient Indian culture, we know we're not just this one body. We've at least 5 layers. And we don't live in this one, world that we see. We live in at least 25 worlds. So this multi-universe, multi-dimension has already been done tens of thousands of years ago. And then when you think, oh my gosh, but the scientists are only recently beginning to juggle this theory of chaos and, multi-dimensions and multi-universes and the black holes. So when we really, that's all it is, Janet. If we just become seekers and say, no matter what we discover, we're open to it. That's the first step.
It's interesting because, I agree that that's a big part of it. It is being open, being curious, being engaged, being willing to try new things that you haven't tried before. But there's another aspect to it for me, and that has to do with, it's probably seeking out information that will help guide my steps along the path. And I look, for example, at the way things evolved in Africa for me. I was originally invited there to speak at an International Women's Day event in Uganda by Jane Nakalema. And then when I found out that they did not have clean water in Katwadi, Uganda, and because I have connections with the water bearers, I was able to bring 5 Sawyer water filters with me to Katwadi. And we actually did a training, a demonstration at 2 different schools, primary schools in the Katwadi area. I think one was in Kaziru and one was in Katwadi. To watch those children, the amazement on their faces, and the parents and the teachers as well, took this muddy, muddy water that they'd gotten out of the road, put it through a Sawyer water filter. It came out clean and purified and drinkable, and I think it has just about all bacteria and viruses taken out of the water. To watch those children, and there's some, I've got some videos up on my Facebook page if anybody is interested. I have to scroll down a bit, but yes, to watch those children take that clean water and drink it. They did not want to give up the cup that they had and share it with a friend. They were so entranced with this clean water. And John Sentamu, who is the guiding director of the Katwadi, I'm trying to think of the name of it. It's the Good Shepherd Primary School in Katwadi. It's connected with the Anglican Church. He says now the children, they're actually almost fighting over the clean water, and they're beginning to get interested in the fact that they can improve their lives and they can drink clean water and reduce the disease in the community, the disease and the death. So, and it was also very interesting to me. Decided to fly into Cape Town, South Africa, and I knew no one in Cape Town and had no connections there at all. yet, Ann Smith, who is normally on this call, she had a memorial service she needed to say. She connected me with a woman who had just joined one of her Facebook groups, who said that she lived in Cape Town. So I messaged her. She connected me with a Swedish university professor who then gave me a lot of information about Cape Town, connected me with safe places to stay, told me about where I should look for accommodations that would be safe. It's really important to co-create in this expanding consciousness collective, to co-create a safe space. So what we're talking about is freedom, not license. You are not free to go out and murder other people or rape or commit other violent acts. You are free to do what you want as long as you aren't hurting anybody else or yourself, because you have to care for yourself as well as the people around you. It's when you boil it down to something like that, it's really pretty simple. Just keep an open mind, do whatever you want. Just make a real effort not to harm anyone with your own choices. Oh, and I also connected in Africa. I connected with a friend whom I had first met through Wisdom University. I had met her in Chartres, France. And as it turned out, I actually went on a safari that is CNP Safaris, which is run by Veronica's husband, Lo. And she and I also spent about 3 days together, and we just reestablished this wonderful, wonderful friendship and connection. We probably had no contact at all for 3 years, and yet when we were together, it was as if we had never been physically separated at all. So you're talking about this sense of oneness, and it's oneness, and yet it does not destroy the uniqueness that each one of us brings to this planet, our unique thoughts, our unique experiences, unique training, our unique education, our unique upbringing. That's all unique. But when you, and I'm going to struggle for words here, when you're connected with that underlying energy, lack of a better word,
it's a substrate.
Okay, you want to elaborate on that?
Yes. You see, we gather a lot of these outer world experiences, whether it is being put into school, having the education. This becomes our outer world experiences. We get the name, the clothing, the house we live in. All of this becomes our unique experiences of the outer world. So this is something that is transient. It changes. Even us, we change from a baby to an adult to an elder. Even the body is transient. We may have that identity at that time, but even that changes. So all that is in flux. But the only thing that doesn't, and that is always there, even if you're 8 years old or 80 years old, whether you are a prince in the royal family or you're poverty-stricken in the heart of Africa, there's that one thread that runs throughout. And sometimes we are connected with that consciously. All the other times where we are existing right now because we are connected with it, but we're just not conscious of it, which is the sad thing. And this is where the Indian culture tries to revive that, where if you are conscious of it all the time, then life is lived at a different dimension. So when we drop all of those other, there's no need for the other external identities. There really isn't. And when you're comfortable with the fact that you don't need those identities, and this comes into play when you are with a friend who you haven't seen for a long time, and then you just reconnect, and it's as if there wasn't anything missing, because now you're actually functioning, you're existing on that level, that substrate, that essential foundation that is really you, and that's where you're connecting. And that's where what you're saying, it's that oneness. And most people are, especially in the westernized countries where we've been educated to fit into the system, to get a job, to educate ourselves so we get a job, get a title, make money, all of that. Those are that's the purpose of life. We get so enthralled by it. And we don't realize that there is something that we truly are. And it's only when we drop those identities that we can be one. But for most people, they're terrified because they still want to be that unique individual. As long as we cling on to that fear of losing or dissolving all these external identities, we still have this fear. We still want to be this unique individual when there's no need for it. It's only when we truly dissolve this need of this unique individual, which has been imposed on us by society and by people who themselves don't understand the spiritual level that we really exist at. So this fear of losing this uniqueness is really what holds us back. So when we reach that stage, yes, first we're open, we become seekers, and as we continue to seek, we begin to realize there's so many things around us we don't really need. And in fact, in India, for the sannyasis, it is mandatory that they leave behind all their possessions, just don on a loincloth or orange cloth, or saffron robe, whatever it is, and literally live their lives that way. It's legal, in fact, for them to do that. They're not going to be burnt at the stake or, anything of that nature. And wherever they go, people are open to them. They bring them, invite them into their house and feed them and give them a place to stay. So it's essential for them to experience the state of not having these unique identities so that they can truly experience this oneness, so that when they then go and share it with others, they're not sharing it because they've learned about it and read it in a book somewhere else, or they've gotten a degree and a certificate saying you're a coach, or you're certified with all of this, you can go and teach. That's not it. They've actually truly experienced it. They're living it, and they're sharing it. So it's this authenticity that we need to get back into as humans. This is the key.
And as I'm listening to you, V, I'm thinking just how hard it is to put this into words. And the words aren't totally accurate. I know they're pointers, they're fingers pointing at the moon. Because you cannot objectify and you cannot conceptualize what this is. I've struggled for 50 years trying to do this, and I've finally given up and surrendered. I cannot conceptualize it with any complete accuracy. Yes, I can use words in specific contexts with specific people to probably open up their minds. And I think that's what this Expanding Consciousness Collective is about. It's offering as a gift the opportunity to see other options in life, see other possibilities, and try them out and see if they work. Maybe they work, Maybe they don't. Maybe they work in some contexts and not in others. I mean, you were talking about giving up the unique identity, and I understand what you're saying, but my own path, I think, has been more to be willing to step into what felt like a unique identity because I was shedding all the culturally conditioned structures that I'd been brought up with. So it felt unique in the sense that I was saying, no, I'm not going to be controlled by doctrine. No, I'm not going to accept words that don't make any sense to me. I'm going to make my own choices in each and every moment. And some of them may have good results and some of them may have bad results. But I'm going to notice. I'm going to make choices and I'm going to notice what happens. And then choose my next step. The ultimate essence or centering, my perspective, is just what Ram Dass said, be here now and be aware now and know that you are free. And it doesn't mean that all your choices are going to be easy. They aren't. Because people who are very conditioned and stuck in doctrine and dogma are going to feel threatened if you start thinking outside of the box or doing things outside of the box. And that has always felt to me like stepping into my uniqueness. But there's also a sense in which the uniqueness is simply a pattern that at some deep level, which I can't articulate, it does come together in a sense of unity and freedom and authenticity, speaking your own truth in each and every moment. And then choosing your words consciously. This is not easy to talk about. You cannot really conceptualize it. We're trying here, but we're doing the best we can. But the bottom line is it's an experience.
Yes, and I think it's what's very important for people, when they're beginning to seek, it's so easy to seek and to feel that, yes, we are free beings, but, I want to know more, I want to experience, and then actually being roped into something that offers that, but is really just another version of what you really were before, and it's so convincing that you begin to get roped into it, and you think you now are free, but you're really not, because you're now roped into another organization. It's just new and novel, and that's where the excitement is, and perhaps the novelty is what makes you feel that you're free, but you're really not. So this is where we need to seek for the absolute truth. Even if it means, and this is where I perhaps this example, it just came to me whilst you were chatting, about this unique identity and all of that. Now, imagine if a crime was committed, and you were the one who people thought had committed the crime. So you were then incarcerated. You're put into prison. You haven't committed the crime, but you're put into prison. And now that's a whole different culture there. You have to abide by all these rules. You have to even come up with things just to survive for the day because the other inmates, have their plan of attack against you. So you come up with this whole different purpose of life just for surviving in that prison. So this is what you continue your life doing until one day someone outside proves that you're innocent, and then you're let free, right? So this is what has happened to us right now, where we're put into, through all the systems that have evolved around us because of human greed, a need to possess, a need to dominate. They've created this entire world, human world that we see around us, and we've been roped into believing that is what it is. So we've gotten ourselves into this prison, and whilst we're in it, we've got to survive. Otherwise, who knows? One of the other inmates may plan to, do whatever they want to us. So this is what our lives have become. But only when that inmate truly clings on to his knowledge that he has not committed that crime. I truly, truly have not committed that crime. I am free in my mind no matter what anyone else says. That is what is important, and that very will cuts out a different emotional setup, mindset, and even spiritual evolving of that person, even though they're in prison. I'm not sure if that helps at all, Janet.
No, I think that's a good example, because the external, you can be centered and authentic regardless of your external circumstances. And you're just standing there firm, and the chaos can be swirling around you. You're just there. You're just present. So one can be in prison. One can have people defaming them. Look at all the great spiritual leaders who were killed by people who didn't understand them. Jesus, Socrates, Dr. Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi, a whole slew of very spiritual leaders who got assassinated because they were standing in their own strength, their own presence, their own spiritual leadership. There are a lot of people that are threatened by that because they are still stuck in a little conceptual box, whatever one they grew up with or whichever one makes them feel comfortable. So a lot of what expanding consciousness is to me is being willing to step outside of the conceptual boxes that limit us. And a lot of the time, we don't even know that we're limited. We take what we've been taught for granted. From the time we're a year old, our mothers are teaching us the meaning of mommy, daddy, dog, cat, house. And we think these things are real. They're conceptualizations of an experience, which maybe we can all agree on. It's convenient in terms of communication. But again, the words are not the experience. The map is not the territory. So you and I today are creating a pile of maps. And yes, they're useful. They're helpful. Maybe something one of us says will help somebody someplace, sometime. Who knows? We don't know. You and I have no control over that. But both of us can stand in our own authenticity and speak our own truth and let the words fall where they may, how they may, and we can't control that.
There's no need for control, and again, going back to the ancient Indian cultures, there's no need for even values or morals or ethics if you really are living the truth. So the main thought is question your life. Is this the way you want your life to be? Once you start questioning your life, it might be a bit different if you already have a family, you have children, you have this infrastructure, because then you also have to contend with what others say, because you're in this multi-relationship structure. So whatever you're doing also affects the others. So you're in a different situation in this lifetime. If you're single, then you have more options. You know, you can truly explore what freedom is, and don't be afraid. You know, when you go with the flow, then you learn more about yourself. And it's only as far as you want to take it. So it all depends on you. What do you want? What do you think this life is about? And where do you want to go in this lifetime? Do you just want to continue as you are? Or do you want to explore it to the maximum you can in this lifetime? Because no matter what happens, you're coming back. Because this lifetime is too short for us to even explore so much. Because by the time we reach the stage where we're even asking the questions, we're almost, past 60. And then we go, oh gosh, now what? But whatever you learn is never forgotten. This again goes back to the ancient Indian wisdom. Whatever you learn in any lifetime is never forgotten, and you will always have access to it. So this is what, once we understand that, we understand that if we can evolve as much as we can in this lifetime, it's going to help us in the next lifetime, because we're not one being. If you want to talk about not being limited, then we have to realize we are limitless. We're infinite. We're oneness, not one, but oneness. And explore it as much as you can or want to. It's all up to you. But here we are.
There's an interesting paradox or pull here, from my perspective anyway. I think we hold on to our doctrines and our concepts because they make us feel very safe. And yet, and they're also very useful. They have lots of useful purposes. But when we, when we look at them not as truths, but as useful ways of structuring our experience, we become much more open in terms of how we think. We become co-creative instead of stuck in a particular truth that we've been taught is right, a particular doctrine. So the doctrines can have meaning in terms of experience, but they're so often misinterpreted. And we grab hold of them because they make us feel secure. I often think that life is a bit like a moving picture. And then at some point our minds want to stop that moving picture at a single frame, so that we can analyze it, dissect it, understand it, manipulate it, use it. And while our minds have stepped outside of the flow and are looking at this single frame, which is only one frame of millions of infinite frames, the whole video keeps moving, and we keep moving with it. So that our minds create artificial constructs. Again, they're useful, but they're not necessarily true. And there may be some contexts in which they're valid and other contexts in which they aren't. An example that comes to mind is in the 14th century, most men thought the earth was flat. And everybody agreed the earth is flat. And now with more exploration and the ability of people to travel around the globe, we know the earth is not flat. Yet at one point in time, and time too, I think, is a construct, everybody thought that was true. Everybody thought that if you went far enough, and here the fear comes up, you would fall off the edge of the earth. And God knows what would happen to you then. Now we know that's not so because we have evolved our thinking. You see, and getting back to this whole idea of time, there is a sense when you are, let me say, when you are present, when you're in the energy, you call it the oneness energy, time collapses. There is no time. It's a human construct, and you are present right here, right now, and everything you need is available right here, right now.
Yes, and this whole topic of time, perhaps we could have another session on it because that is so essential in the ancient Indian traditions. Even today, it is the cosmic time is Kala, and that is what initiated life. But this time that we talk about, the human construct, came about again through the limited perceptions of a human trying to understand the movements around him. So time itself, the way we think of it, is so limited. If we really truly question everything, we'll realize that everything we have created, we use that term very loosely, humans have created, is really from very limited perceptions. And yet we put so much of value into it, and we live and die by it, terrified or pleasured by it. When we realize this ignorance, and it really is such ignorance that we're living under, the Indian traditions call it Maya. You know, it's this ignorance, and we continue to be in it. Once we realize that, we're only seeing this because we've constructed limited understanding from our limited understanding, like Janet said. Initially, they thought the earth was flat. And then over time, they got some tools, and now they think the earth is, spherical. And who knows, maybe later on when they have more tools, it just changes depending on how far they can expand their limited understanding. So this is the Maya we're trapped in. And we think it's so real. And our entire world revolves around it. We live and die by this unreality. It's not real, and yet we cling on to it. Once we dive into this and understand that we really operate according to the cosmic laws, not this silly human laws that humans with their limited knowledge have created, that's when you tap into another dimension. That's when you can truly live. But it's all up to you, really. Yes, it's all been known for over 20,000 years. And it's all there for you to download.
Or access. Maybe that's a better way of thinking of it. It's always available.
It is. It's up to you.
When you open up your mind, and another aspect of this, which I find helpful, is to get very clear, and I think you said it earlier, V, about what I want. What are my intentions? The Buddhists talk in their Eightfold Path, among other things, about right intentions. So what are my intentions for my life? Did you even realize that you could set intentions for your life, that you could set visions, that you could, by setting the intention, if your intention is strong enough, it will manifest. It may not manifest in the way you anticipate, but there's a saying, and I can't remember who said it, but it's something about when you make a commitment, the universe steps in to support you. And that's been my experience, that when I have a vision, I set an intention, that I don't know how it's going to happen. It seems almost impossible. But I open myself up to the support of the universe and of other people. Manifests. The support comes in and things happen in a way that my little mind never could have figured out.
There you're tapping into your third eye, Janet. That's the inner eye. That is where the seat of will is. And when you tap into that, then you have closer access to the cosmic oneness that you really are. And that's very profound when we go beyond the mind, because the mind is really a tool to help us as humans to navigate in this world. It's only there as a tool. And go ahead.
Very interesting exercise is just to pull back and start watching your mind. Watching how the thoughts in your mind affect your emotions and your health and your bodily state. And if you choose to do it, and if you have a strong enough belief, you can actually change your emotions and change your health, change your bodily responses by changing the thoughts in your mind. You can choose the thoughts you're going to think. But you have to start watching your own mind for a while first. That's called the witness, I believe in. I think it's
Shakti. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's again goes back to the ancient Vedic and Agama traditions, where that is the way to truly experience and get a glimpse of what you really are. And that is, it's the final steps of the Patanjali yoga system as well. So it's quite profound. It goes beyond, of course, this short session that we have. But just to give people food for thought, to go beyond the thinking, because we're so trained and conditioned, enslaved. We really are slaves to the system that has trapped us to believe that either we're this body, so we have to keep feeding it and clothing it, exercising it, giving it all the things it wants, all these emotions, make it feel sexy, make it feel strong, make it feel powerful, this identity or this mind, to have positive thoughts or this thought or that thought. We're not that. We're beyond it. These are really just systems for us to operate in and function as humans, and if we realize we're beyond it, and the sadhus in India, they can travel astrally. This concept that the Westerners have of being limited to this one planet, or trying to live in this one body, and all of that is so limited. We're not these limited beings. And you can tap into this firstly also through this observer experience that Janet is talking about. And of course, if you need more information, you can always message me as well. But all of this is available to you, and it's being used by millions over the thousands of years. And if they can do it, you can too. All you need to firstly do is be a seeker. And you will find the knowledge, and it's beyond knowledge. It is through experience, your experience, and it's totally accessible for you, for everyone.
And Vee, with that, I think we need to close this. I see we're after 3 o'clock.